1 second. Almost forgot the chat screen. There we go. We had a little bit of an echo earlier. Sorry about that. Sorry, I thought that was funny. I'm a dad. Can't help myself. Welcome to the Build Show. I'm your host, Ben Estrino, over here at the Empower Gaming Studio, and tonight we're going to do some upgrades. That GPU looks like a 1660 Ti or Super. I think it's actually a 2060. It's neither. It is actually an RX 5500 XT. 8 gig. And it's an Asus Dual, if you really want to know which one that is. It's an old card. Hey, Jeffrey C., welcome to the Build Show. Onra, welcome back to the Build Show. Steve Anderson, first in the chat. Welcome back to the Build Show. Ant-Man, welcome back to the Build Show. Mike, welcome back to the Build Show. What's up, Poor? Roy, over on the Twitch side, both of you, welcome back to the Build Show. Damn, I was so wrong. I know, it actually looks like a 2060 or a 16. It does look like the 1660 Super or Ti. It does. But it is an AMD card. Not even close. So what we're going to do tonight, I've actually started the process on this, and I'm glad I did because the clone process took forever. But it is a, the whole story behind this is a build I built a long time ago for a customer. We're talking years now, and this has been running for him just fine, and he's been enjoying it and using it. But he had some issues trying to get it to Windows 11, which is what prompted all this. So he called me and he said, hey, Windows 11 says it won't upgrade on this, and it was because it was running an old BIOS version. I'm talking like 4 or 5 years old. So I'm pretty sure what's under here is a Ryzen 5 2600 or 1660, or I'm sorry, not a 1600 CPU, Ryzen 5 1600, or a Ryzen 5 2600, one of the two, with a stock cooler. So yes, Ant-Man, I did use a stock cooler in the past, long time ago, 7 or 8 years ago. I don't know if this was 7 or I think it was more like 4, maybe 5, pushing it. It was a long time ago. This is a deep cool case to show you the age of this case as well. I have all the panels off and off to the side here because we actually have to finish cleaning those. Have you ever burnt yourself on a fridge? I've never burnt myself on a fridge. I've broken fridge doors. Our fridge door right now is actually broken. But other than that, that's about the most I've ever done to a fridge. I still have my 5700 XT. Still a great card. I mean, this 5500 is still a great card. There's nothing wrong with it. We're just planning to give it a little bit more horsepower. He did do an upgrade in between. He added more RAM. So he went from 16 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes, I believe. So he's already added more RAM to the system. But while we were talking about the BIOS upgrade and doing that remotely through a remote session, I was we got into talking about the performance of the system, and he wanted a little bit more performance, so we talked about getting the Ryzen 9 5900 XT, which we're going to be installing, and then also a bigger cooler, which is the Peerless Assassin V2 120 SE. For the bigger CPU, because this cooler is not going to run that CPU very well. He doesn't really game a lot on the system, so there's not a whole ton of gaming that happens on this. This is mostly for his work, and he does more like CAD design stuff. So, if I remember correctly, and So there's not really a whole need for graphics. So this graphics card is just fine. The power supply is just fine. The motherboard's going to be just fine for what he's doing. He wanted more SSD storage, so we upgraded from a 512 SATA SSD to a 2 terabytes M.2 Gen 3 SSD, because this board doesn't even support Gen 4, so there's really no reason to waste money on that. And he's really not planning on upgrading that anytime soon. So this is probably the final upgrade for this system until he looks at a new system. So it'll buy him a few more years, hopefully, without any issues. Because the system's been really good, other than some of the fans died on him as well. Which we did have fans here in the front, and he's removed them. So I have some replacement fans for him. He bought one Thermalright fan, which I recommended. And then I have 2 Arctic fans that I have here sitting in a pile of fans that I have that I'll throw in there just to make sure we have 3 black fans on the front. And they're all PWM, so we'll get those connected up to the board and going. So what I've already done to the system is I've already installed the 2 terabyte M.2 NVMe, and then I used Acronis to clone the 512 to the 2 terabyte and then expand the partition out to the entirety of the drive. So that's already been completed, and I verified it boots to the 2 terabyte drive. So next steps is really install the new CPU, install the new cooler, and then we are going to install the fans, finish cleaning this up, and then we need to go through the Windows 11 upgrade process, which if he has anything important on the screen, I'm not going to share the screen while we do that. So unless I have the window open taking up the entirety of the screen, but I can show you the Windows 11 update process. Now that we already have the BIOS up to date, I've already done that as well. So that is one thing that I would recommend if you are doing this process. For example, you have an older AIM-4 system, or any PC for that matter, or any motherboard, upgrade to a new CPU. If you have a older motherboard and you are upgrading the CPU, it is always good. It's always a good idea to go through and do the BIOS update first, because 9 times out of 10, the BIOS version that is on the board, especially if it's been running for a couple of years, might not even support the new CPU. So I've already done the BIOS update, so that's already been completed. We did that over the phone with the customer before we decided that we were even going to do these upgrades, so that he could get this to Windows 11 if he wanted to. So that portion has been completed, but if you are ever doing that type of upgrade, make sure you do a BIOS update before you put your new CPU in, because you might find out that the BIOS version you're running doesn't support the new CPU. So it's specifically important for some of the newer stuff. For example, AIM-4 going from like a 2000 series CPU to a 5000 series CPU. You're probably running an old version of the BIOS, or for example on Intel platform, going from a 12th gen on a Z690 board before the 13th or 14th gen were released. You might need to do a BIOS update in order for the BIOS to understand what CPU you have or that you're putting in. So it's possible the BIOS version you have doesn't support the new CPU. So it's always a good idea, and especially on the Intel platform in general, always a good idea to do a BIOS update first. All right, so let's get to the chat real quick. Hey, Jeffrey C. How's it going, man? Owner of damn IO. I was so wrong. Retro GPU now, anyway. A young Ben? What are you talking about? I'm not a young Ben. I'm a old man. How is a 59 XT? It's basically a 5900X is basically what it is. And pretty close to the 5950 XT, but not quite as hot. That's about the major difference. Specs, flow is epic. So this is a system that I built a while ago, like 5 years ago, back when I started in power gaming. And this is a, I think a Ryzen 5 2600, and then also this is a RX 5500, and it had previously 16 gigs of RAM on a B450 motherboard with a 512 gigabyte SATA SSD and a 1 terabyte hard drive. The hard drive and the SATA SSD are still in the system, But we're not going to be using the 512 SSD anymore. I unplugged that because it has a Windows boot on it, so I don't want it to boot to that. I want it to boot to the 2 terabyte SSD that we installed and cloned over to. And then we're going to be doing the upgrades. And if you want to know what the upgrades are, just type in !build, since I already ran through those. I found a 4060 Ryzen 7 5700X 32 gigs 1 terabyte NVMe SSD and a 240 millimeter AIO for $900. Is that good or bad? It's not bad. So I just quoted actually a new build with the Ryzen 7 5700X 32 gigs of RAM and a 2 terabyte SSD with an RTX 4060, and I think it was a 360 or 240 millimeter AIO from Thermalright, and I quoted that, and it was just over $1,000. So, and that's all brand new parts with labor to build. So it is a little high if it's a used system that you're looking at, in my opinion. But it's not bad. It's not like insanely bad. 900 is not bad. I didn't buy it on Newegg. Oh, is it brand new? Then that's pretty good. That's a pretty good price. Where did you buy it? He didn't buy it. He says he was on Newegg. Hey, what's up, XNDR935? I'm just gonna call you X. RTX is the best. Is best, right? Is RTX better than XT? So I think you're asking, is NVIDIA better than AMD? So the NVIDIA RTX graphics cards versus the AMD RX, which in some cases end with XT. I would say it depends on the use case. So if you are a streamer and your main titles rely on DLSS, then the NVIDIA graphics card is probably going to be a better option for you. If you are just purely gaming, you're not streaming, and you want to save some money, the raw power of AMD can go in your favor. It also has FSR, which is similar to DLSS in the AMD cards. So that is an option, and you can save some money there. So, because you'll get, for example, in the 9070 XT, you'll get pretty close to the 5070 Ti performance for $300 less in some cases, depending on where you buy the card and how much it is. But I have seen them that low, so the 5070 Ti is actually coming down in price as well. So another cool thing that's coming. And that's because nobody's buying the cards, and the prices are coming down, and the stock is starting to sit. And when inventory sits, the prices come down. Two different companies, yes. I'm special. No worries. Yeah, Steve Anderson, it depends on really the use case, what you're planning to do with it. Are you just planning to game? Are you planning to stream? Are you planning to, what games are you planning to play? That really kind of defines what graphics card you should be looking at. Fans with DLSS loot really bad. I have seen that really fast moving objects don't look good. Thanks, YouTube. LOL. I have a BIOS on a 2011 BIOS. Oh yeah, that's an older system. It probably is not going to support Windows 11 without you doing some tweaking there. I think there's still ways to get Windows 11 on some older hardware, but you got to go through a few steps to make it work. But, all right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and switch the view so I am not sitting in front of everything. And we could get a CPU installed. We'll start there. What we're going to do is remove the stock cooler. And if you've ever removed these before, this is why I hate them. These like to create an adhesive between the cooler and the CPU, so when you pull this out, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be pulling the CPU out. So we'll flip it over and we'll see if the CPU is on the bottom, which I can guarantee it's going to be there, because it almost always is there. So we'll start by removing these, the cooler and the CPU. I might actually remove the GPU just to have some more access. I'm also going to unplug the power cord because I had that plugged in. I was running the system earlier doing the clone. So let's go ahead and start with removing the GPU just to get it out of our way. And this is a very old school deep cool case that you can't find anymore. This is an antique case now. I used to do a lot of builds in these. They were basically my Montech Air 903 Max today. These were basically... They were nice. They were sleek. The downside was the front panel was solid, but that was the design back then, honestly. Unfortunately, that would restrict a lot of airflow, and it still does. But if you get enough fans in here, it'll move some air. So, so this is a ASRock Steel Legend B450. It was a beautiful motherboard back in the day. Highly recommended this board back when, you know, these were released. They were really nice. I did have white fans on the front here, so this looked really fancy with white fans. And I can't remember if we had anything else that was white. I think we might have had white RAM, I don't remember. But it looked really nice. The only thing that was missing was cable extensions. But that was actually before I started using cable extensions in the builds, because those weren't super cheap back then. Alright. Excuse me. Okay, so next we're going to remove this cooler. Usually I say fire this thing up and warm up your CPU to make sure it's nice and warm. And usually that's to help with the separation, but I've done these enough where I don't have to. But if you have trouble with getting this off, you can do that, and that will help kind of release it if you struggle with it. The back plate is probably going to fall behind the case here, so that's going to be fun dealing with that later. But not that big of a deal. We don't have pins on the motherboard. And there went the back plate. I heard it drop. So and as you can see, the CPU came out with the cooler stuck to it like an adhesive. That is exactly what I thought would happen. So our CPU is already out of the socket and stuck to the cooler. Yay, we're clapping. Thank you. So I'm gonna pop this. Typically use a flathead screwdriver and just slowly break it loose. Do not put a ton of pressure on it, but if you just slightly give it some pressure, it should pop, and that is exactly what it did. And now we have a CPU released from the socket, or from the cooler. So to make sure I don't damage these pins while I clean it, I am going to put it back into the socket temporarily, so we could clean off the top of the cooler. I'm sorry, top of the CPU, then the cooler. So it holds the pins in place. I can wipe it down. There it is. It's actually Ryzen 5 3600. My mistake. So that was actually a decent Ryzen 5. So next, we're going to go ahead and get our new CPU out and drop that in. Here's our Ryzen 9 5900 XT. And then I'm just going to go ahead and put the CPU back into its packaging and slide it back into the package here. Maybe. And there we go. Put the CPU in the package upside down, but who actually cares? Okay, so that is completed. Now let's get our cooler installed. Click on our chat here. If you are a creator on YouTube and edit, are a streamer, then NVIDIA, they have CUDA and NVENC, the NVENC, and other software that will help you. But AMD is a very good option for gamers. AMD also has some pretty good options now for streaming as well. So it's not just NVIDIA, but I'd say NVIDIA is probably stronger in that area. I will pay you $100 if the CPU is not on the cooler, LOL. It is on the cooler. So, oof, the classic 3600. I know, it's been a while since I've seen that. Is Intel i5 good? Depends on what generation of Intel i5 we're talking about. XN DR935. Big respect. Huge upgrade. I know. We're going from the 3600 to the 5900 XT. Massive upgrade performance-wise. i5 12th gen to 14th gen, really good. Yes. 13th gen? Yeah, the 13th generation i5 is good. XN DR935. Solid upgrade. Did you get my Facebook message, sir? Grab Games. I don't know if I saw your Facebook message. Oof, that looks like a fun situation. Oh, it's fine. This is normal. Everyday thing. Let me check. I don't remember seeing a Facebook message from earlier today, so for the record, Facebook messages are the least monitored in my on my phone. So, if you message me on Facebook, I cannot guarantee that I'm going to answer or respond to it immediately. Texting is usually the best option, which you can text the 248-617-1050 number. And the answer is no, Ken, it is not too late. You're more than welcome to stop by. I just looked at it. I don't know what I was doing about an hour ago. I was prepping for the stream, I know that, and I was working on this. And my phone was over there on the charger. So, YouTube, then Twitch for message. The rest is far less ready. Oh, yeah. I'm talking about Facebook. He sent me a instant message directly to the page. I'm sorry. Oh, you're fine. I'll probably be done. You're not interrupting the stream. This isn't going to be a very long stream unless we decide to build the build, which I was going to do because these came in. I was going to do a build either tomorrow night or Monday. Probably going to be a Monday thing. We got a lot of stuff we got to do tomorrow. Okay, so let's get this cooler installed. Yes, yes, yes. Do you have any idea why a new PC would start fine but have issues restarting? I've seen that somebody's mentioned that a couple times now in the chat. I don't know if it's different people or if it's the same person or if it's just you, Jeffrey. But I've seen that reported a couple times. And usually, if you are having trouble with restarting a PC, it could be quite a few different things. Most of the time, it could be the power supply or the motherboard. That is the problem. But it could be many different things causing it. So, unfortunately, that is not an easy one to troubleshoot without swapping out parts and testing. You know, if it was here in my shop, I would probably test the power supply first. If that didn't work, then I would test the motherboard, and if that didn't work, then I'd start looking at other components. But the only other thing that could be from there would be Windows, honestly, causing the problem. Hey, what's up, Luke? Welcome back to the build stream, or build show. Hey, Ben, curious, why are you building so many PCs? Is it for customers? Luke, yes, I build for customers. So, people order PCs, and then I build them, and people get to watch their PC built live. People get to learn as I'm building, get to ask questions. It's kind of a win-win for everybody. So, if I could build PCs free for people, I would totally do that. Just need more income from the YouTube channel. See, in about an hour, I'll keep lurking for viewership. Oh, you don't have to do that. Drive safe, and we'll see you in a bit. Hey, what's up, Jesse? Welcome back to the build show, sir. And he fixes the PCs, repastes GPUs. Oh yeah, I do everything. Open loops, which I'm working on one. I need to really finish within the next couple days here. Trying to finish for one of our followers here. I need to flip some PCs fast, or our roof leaked for 4 months before the landlord fixed it. Now there's black mold all over our ceiling. His solution is to just paint and prime over it. That's dangerous, Casey. That is dangerous. Lease is about to renew, and I don't have the money to move, so it's a crappy situation. I understand. I hear you. I think it's tight right now for anybody that's building and flipping PCs. The market is definitely a buyer's market. So if you browse the market and look at all the available PCs and the parts and things, it is a 100% buyer's market. And you can also look at the shelves at Micro Center, for example. They're just stocked. Nothing's moving. So prices are coming down. That means we're taking hit on stuff that we had inventoried, obviously. So that's a loss. This time of the year, it's always a loss. Anytime we start entering the summer outside of tax season, you start losing money on parts. That's why I don't like to hold a lot of parts here. I try not to. Unfortunately, I didn't follow my own advice. I have a few builds here myself, just sitting. So I'm in the same boat. I'm gonna use this stock cooler just to hold the back plate in place while we install the brackets. Yeah, it's close enough. And we'll get our new cooler out and install it. I've also got a massive pile of parts that I have to return. I've got quite a few kits of RAM going back to G.Skill for RMA. I've got a motherboard going back to Gigabyte. I got a Segitech power supply going back to Segitech. What else? Thermaltake power supply going back to Thermaltake. Oh, another Gigabyte motherboard. That's 2 Gigabyte motherboards. That's mostly because I use kind of Gigabyte motherboards. And then I've got an Intel i9 13900K going back to Intel. So that is in my UPS outbox right now, the stack, when UPS shows up on Monday. How's Christmas for me? Christmas is usually pretty busy. So last year, I don't know if you guys were around last year or if some of you were. I know Steve was, and I think Roy was. A few of us, a few of the core followers here were around last year. But I mean, we're doing builds, quite a few builds. So $1,000 a good budget. $1,000 is a good budget for a nice PC right now. Yeah, definitely is. Come on. Need the package to open up. Jeez. Yep. So this B450 is so old it says AMD fan. I knew you were going to use the stock cooler. That's age right there. Alright. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get these brackets in. Well, trying to get this bracket in. Well, trying to hold the bracket, excuse me. See if we could do this. Nope, that did not like that. How is 2/4 for a PC? Is that a good budget? No, it's not a good budget. You know that. That's a silly question. Retainers in Florida have legal options if their landlord fails. Yeah. That does not sound like a safe environment. And mold is not a joke you want to play around with. But painting over it is not the solution. Alright, so the trick I used there was I just put a box on the back of the motherboard and then put the back plate on that and lined it up with the motherboard to hold it in place so it wasn't falling back. The other option is to lift it up, stick your hand underneath, hold the back plate, and then do what you gotta do with one hand. More of a pain in the butt, but that is a easier way of doing it. So now we've got this mounted to the back plate. We're good to go. You get the cooler mounted. You have 2 kids? Yeah, that's even worse. If it was just a me thing, I might fight it and stay there. Because it's a cost to move, you know? Just like you said. Casey, good to know. Dude, when I was 16, I built an i7 2600K, a GTX 5090. 128 gig SSD, and used an high-end ASRock motherboard. The motherboard showed up DOA. Like, I don't even know how that happens. It happens actually quite a bit. We just had one a few days or a couple weeks ago. And then we had another one that was supposed to be brand new, and it showed up used, and the pin's damaged. So it happens a lot, actually. Fix it yourself, Casey, and subtract from rent. Could do that. Very nice 1080p, but yeah, I would maybe talk to a lawyer first. Luke, do you know how much money it costs to properly take care of black? Yeah, it's there's a large cost to it, especially if there's still moisture, which there's mold. There's probably still moisture. No HOA independent landlord. Oh, that sucks. ASRock B550, Jesse? This is a ASRock B450. Yeah, I'll bring you down. You can see it. The B450 Steel Legend by ASRock. I always say ASRock. Some people say ASRock. I just go with, because they're both capital letters, ASRock. I don't know if I'm saying it right or not. I've always liked the Steel Legend series. It's kind of disappointing to see issues with the AMD CPUs right now, but I don't do very much work with the newer ASRock stuff. So, older chipset, yep, older. It's a B450, not that much older. No one had computers when I was a kid. That was in the 1960s. Yeah, I don't know why anybody didn't have computers then. Wick fams, welcome back to the Build Show. I turned 28 in 2 hours. I'm so old. Oh, please. You're young still. Clean looking motherboard. I know. For its time, this was an awesome looking motherboard. I would have to say. Ben, can you comment on what brand motherboard is the most reliable in your extensive experience and trend with quality from AM4 to AM5? So, I would say Gigabyte, but I didn't like Gigabyte motherboards when they were B450s because of their software and their BIOS kind of was crap. So I would have to say MSI or Asus was probably the top boards to have through AM4 and AM5. Probably Asus would be the winner. But I've had my fair share of failures on all of them. So it's pretty equal. It's just if we're getting down to the you know, which one's the best, you know, we go back and forth on everybody's BIOS. I'd say Asus is probably the best BIOS. And then we look at aesthetics. Asus is pretty good looking. ASRock, I think, had some pretty cool looking boards. MSI has some pretty good looking boards. And then you look at performance as well. They all performed in their own way pretty equally. So it was hard to say unless you're looking at overclocking and VRMs and things like that. Then, you know, generally I like to lean on Asus for that. And that's goes back to the simplicity of the BIOS or the BIOS itself. So, and then you look at the software and drivers and releases, etc. How do they manage that? Asus is probably one of the best, in my opinion, when it comes to all that. So, even though they've had some issues in the past, they're still pretty good at it. And they're pretty good at communication, which is nice to have. MSI, some giant idiot says, I'd say between Asus and MSI, they're pretty neck and neck. Thanks, Ben. I lean MSI with BIOS flash button. I mean, pretty much all motherboards today on AM5 have that flash button for the BIOS. Screw Asus business practices. Yeah, that's what I meant by they've had some issues. But their products are good. They just do quirky stuff. And no, I am not sponsored by anybody. So, other than Dubby, if you need some energy. Glad I got the Asus B850F. Just got to figure out the restarting. Yeah, that could be a power, like I was saying, that could be a power supply issue or could be the motherboard. But ASRock Fatality is love. Yes, that was a very good board as well. Like I said, ASRock had some pretty good boards, and the only thing that I can, you know, crap on ASRock for is their BIOS. It just wasn't that great. The mainstream BIOS was like, bah. Some of it sometimes frustrating. But, and then their software. For example, their RGB software was just, you can't deny it was just slapped together and here you go, here's an app. Ben, is it true B550 is going away in favor of the B850? I believe so. And I think you mean the B650, not the B550. So the B650 is going to be, they're going to stop production on that. I'm 99.9% sure, and there's only going to be the B850. I mean, that makes sense because the B850 does everything the B650 does, and it costs them more money to manufacture both boards. So AIM-4 will be showing its age with GPUs now going to PCI 5.0. I bet if we plugged a PCI 5.0 card into a PCI 4.0 slot and then test the difference between the two, you're only going to notice probably a few FPS difference. So I don't think we'll notice that big of a difference. The big difference in PCIe Gen 5 is your storage bandwidth. Your storage bandwidth is significantly faster on PCI Gen 5 versus Gen 4. So if you're video editing, that's where PCI Gen 5 is really going to help you. When you're moving big files around back and forth on the PC, or you're video editing and you're opening and closing files, video files, dropping them into your tool, that's where you're really going to notice performance increase on PCIe Gen 5, in my opinion. I don't really see it being a huge thing with the graphics card, or a big deal. I think it's only going to be like, if we did a side-to-side comparison between PCI Gen 4 and 5 with the GPU, I think there's only a few FPS difference. Yeah, you won't notice it, in my opinion. I've had a hell of a time with my Asus TUF Gaming card, but even with all the problems, I won't get rid of it. It's a very well-built card. How do the British say it? I can't even say it. Aluminum. We say it aluminum over here in the States, and then the Brits and the European folks say it completely different. It's so funny. I didn't know that until I was watching a car video. And then they said this weird word, and I was like, what the hell did he just say? Then I had to go look it up. And then I was curious to find out if we are saying it wrong or if they're saying it wrong. But it's actually, we're both saying it right. I can't even say it the way they say it. They say it so, yes. Aluminum. Aluminium. I can't even say it. I'm not even gonna try. I'm done. I'm done trying. All right, so we've already peeled the peel. We've applied our thermal paste. So let's go ahead and drop the cooler on. So we're gonna match the lettering on the cooler with the lettering on the RAM, which is actually matching the lettering on the motherboard, which is really cool to see come together. Say it like you spell it, it's easy. No. I always say aluminum. I don't know, I'd have to sit there and record myself saying it to figure it out. These are actually really nice fans on this cooler by Thermalright. Quality stuff. This is the V2, by the way. The newer version. I think mostly the fans have changed. That's about it. Why don't PCs have disk drives anymore? I still use mine. Everybody downloads their games and their movies and everything's streamed. Nobody uses discs anymore. The biggest problem with discs was that they had a shelf life. So they would not last, they don't last forever. If you have data on a CD or a DVD, I highly recommend making a backup of it. It is not going to last forever. Aluminium. Aluminium. Not yum at the end. Hey, it sounded like I knew what I was saying. When you plugged into PCI 3.0, that is. Is that Casey? I'd have to go back and read. Well, cards like the 6650 XT saw a 15 to 20% loss in performance because it ran at 4.08 instead of 16, so that's what worries me. I don't think that's necessarily true. I thought that was only on the 6500. 6600 I thought used 6600 and up used the full 16 bandwidth. X16. It's an acquired taste like Thermal Grizzly. True. I worked for a British company and have some English blood. I have some English blood. Well, Scottish blood, should I say. And English blood. And German. And Italian. Yeah, my Tough Gaming OC card is aluminum. And it still weighs 4.7 pounds. 7900 XD. Nice. Damn, did I miss the build? No, you didn't. We started out with a build that we're doing upgrades with. Upgrades for. I forgot I was so zoomed in. Sorry, guys. Next time, say something. Say, hey, Ben. Why don't you zoom out a bit? Why don't PCs have disk drives anymore? I still use mine. We already covered that one. I really like the sound, like when I start up my PC and it goes woo woo. Such a nice startup sound. I think you're talking about the drive sound, maybe? I just built my nephew a PC on a B550 motherboard with a 6650 XT. It only runs at 4x8. That should not be happening. What CPU do you have in there? Should be X16. Because I have a 6650 XT over here on a B550. And that's with a Ryzen 5 5500, which doesn't support PCI Gen 4, so it's only running on PCI Gen 3. And I'm 99% sure that it is running at X16. 5600? Yeah, that's interesting. I'll have to double check mine. It was a inventory build. So I'll have to double check that. The disk drive is so good. This guy has a disk drive in it. I don't know if we can get that on the microphone or not, but it has a hard disk in it. All right, we've got our CPU installed and our new cooler installed. Now all we got to do is clean it up a little bit, and then we got to put some new fans in here. Front fans have failed, or are failing. So I've already blown out dust. Just gonna wipe everything down to get the sticky dust that's still on there off. Then we are going to remove front fan, replace it. He said over time, we did have 3 of these previously installed, but over time they started making weird noises, so he removed them as time went on, which I don't blame him. I would have done the same. And we're going to replace it with a couple of fans, different fans that I have here. He bought one Thermalright fan, and I'm just going to give him 2 Arctic fans. So that way we have proper cooling in the system. Hey, what's up, Hannah? Good morning. Welcome back to the Build Show. I wonder what the PC building culture in Greece is like. I think he was saying it was expensive. I will never spend Noctua prices for fans. The Arctic P12s work just fine for me. I think that's... This is the F12 that we're installing, along with a Thermalright fan. Yeah, it's a little bit of a mix. These are actually 2 different Arctic fans. I just realized. Thought they were the same. They are 2 different ones. Microsoft keys are like 10 bucks, yeah. They don't cost too much. Is this a super budget build? No, this is not a super budget build. This is an upgrade. This is a system that I built a while ago, and we're just upgrading. And some of the fans died on the way, because we built this like 5 years ago. So we upgraded the CPU, and we upgraded the SSD from a SATA SSD to an M.2 SSD, updated the BIOS, and then I'm just re-adding some fans because some fans died on the front here. Keep this system going for another couple of years, at least. A lot of solid upgrades for a system. He doesn't really game. Not really meant. He's not really using it for gaming, I don't think. So don't need any crazy horsepower behind the on the graphics card. I think he does some like CAD design stuff. That's about it. Look at my cable management from years ago. Excellent. Alright, so now that those fans are installed, we can go ahead and drop the GPU back in, I think. Before we do that, I remembered I wanted to clean this. We gotta clean this up a little bit on the backside. Dust likes to build up on these, and it looks gross. Don't like giving back a gross looking PC. Oh. Very nice. Hold on. All right. With that being done, I'm gonna clean the top here real quick, and then we'll clean the panels up, and then we can go ahead and get this thing fired up. Sorry. We're gonna leave that SSD unplugged. It can stay there as a backup for him, I guess. But it has everything from his OS as of today. Steve Anderson, the cable management looks really good. Yeah, I did this a long time ago too. I think we need one more. We'll do that for that panel. This one's got a little bit of dirt on it, you can see. We should clean this one up too. I have not, Luke. I've flipped 23 PCs so far this year, and while I don't recommend them, all my builds have used Aqua Elite AIO and sleeved cables because aesthetics are what sells PCs. This is very true. Nice. This gravity toolless entry magnet thing doesn't work very well anymore. About as good as it's gonna get for that. Clean the glass. There we go. A nice, clean glass. What we want to see. A little bit of elbow grease gets the job done. All right, let's see if this thing will post, shall we? Oh. Here. Play with your toy somewhere else, dude. Look at my feet. And now there's not a whole ton of RGB here, so we're not going to be seeing much. Let's go ahead and fire it up. Well, there's some. Graphics card has some. Took a second for the CPU fans to start spinning. That was concerning. Let me blind myself for a few minutes. All right, so we've got a post. Cool. Hey, Sauce, what's up, man? Or say Zook. I always go through this every time I see your name. Welcome back to the build show anyway. No RGB sad, only the GPU. Tiny light. You can't even adjust it either. So sad. I will never be able to recommend an AIO ever. An air cooler pump failure sucks and usually happens at the worst possible time. I only recommend it in SFF PCs because it's way better than low profile. Yeah, and you can control where the heat is dissipating. A young Ben did it 5 years ago. 5 years younger. Well, think of it like this. Well, depending on introducing water to electricity product. Nah, it's factory sealed. It ain't going anywhere. All right. Because the customer has data on their desktop, I am not going to share the screen. So this is as far as we go with this build. 0 RGB builds are a dime of a dozen these days. Yeah, this has got no RGB. I just put one of my camera lights in here. This is just a little camera light that I use. It's magnetic. Just put it in there so you can see the build running because it's dark. But yeah, it's nice and blacked out. You don't see those very often anymore. LOL, the struggles. I know, it's a struggle. It's Friday. You can't judge me on a Friday. So does it have a disk drive? No, it has a hard disk drive. An HDD. A friend wanted a water-cooled system. I told him to just remember, AIO has 14 points of failure and an air cooler has 2 points of failure. He went air-cooled. It's a good point. Post speakers? You mean the speaker for the motherboard that would beep for air codes or post codes? Yes, I do remember the post speaker. Beep beep. Those are actually, some cases still send the speaker, which is weird. And then but most of the motherboards have the LEDs now to at least show you CPU, RAM, GPU, or post, or boot. The 4 LEDs, or they'll have the QLED, the Q codes at the top. Dang, sometime you need to get some, or get one so we can hear the sound. Yeah, I don't know if I have a good enough mic for that. Do I need to set a power limit too? If I adjust my GPU clock speed, right, Ben? Do I need to set the power limit too? Yes. You would generally, when you're overclocking, you have to increase. If you are overclocking, you would increase your clock speed or your power. I remember OC Genie. I do. You remember the turbo button? Get like, what was it, 10 more megahertz on your CPU? Whatever it was, I can't even remember. I remember actually disabling that on customers' PCs and letting them think it was, meaning not even plugging it in, and then letting people think that it was live so that they'd push the button. They actually swore that it made the PC faster even though the button did nothing. Hey, Paul, over on the Facebook. Thanks for stopping in, sir. Welcome back to the Build Show. You can't delete them now. They're in the chat, Paul. They are live. Live comments. Undervolt overclock on GPUs, in my opinion. Yeah, I remember that. Dang, sometime you need to get one of the... Oh, yeah, so we've already covered that. So, anyway, guys, it's Friday night. Nobody wants to sit here and watch Ben build PCs. I did get this one done for the customer. The only thing I have left to do on it is actually get it upgraded from Windows 10 to Windows 11. That's the last... Excuse me. The last thing I'm going to be doing. Where's my drink? Last thing I have to do on this PC. And then we are good to go. Oh, relevant. Yeah. We will be doing another build Monday night. So I know we didn't do a build tonight. We did a upgrade, but that's because this came in and I had to take care of it. A service, we'll call it. But we do have a build for Monday, so we'll be back Monday night for an actual build. And yeah, that's it. That's all I've got planned for now. I just we'll probably have more next week at some point. I'm just not that far into my calendar right now. You like the all black? Yeah, it's a nice sleek look. Oh, the hell we don't, LOL. Do I, let's see here. Did I miss anything else? I'm just reading through the chat, guys. I'm sure there's a lot that I missed there, but... Well, with that being said, guys... Hopefully on the 16th, Mike says. Nice. I want to pump more performance into my card. I'd be careful about that. Overclocking does like to reduce, because overclocking will introduce heat, so just be careful with it. And also, some games don't like overclocks. For example, Call of Duty does not like overclocks. So as soon as you start overclocking, you might find some stability issues. So just be careful with the overclocking over there on the YouTube. But with that being said, guys, we'll be back live on Monday, and I hope everybody has a good weekend. It's Friday night. Shouldn't be sitting here watching me build PCs, like I said earlier. You should be out there gaming. So let's get to the gaming. Yeah? Happy Friday. We'll see you on Monday night. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I do appreciate you. Have a good night and a good weekend. Want to play, Ben? Maybe. I'll think about it. I've got a couple other people that I said I was going to hang out with, so we'll see. And I got Grab Game coming to pick up his card that we did last week. Built a micro ATX build for a family member, charged $200 for labor because of the insanity. There was a total of 11 ARGB fans in the build. That's more than I charge. I charge $150. But, was the Thermal Paste show? That was the Thermal Paste show, yeah. The Thermal Paste, Thermal Pad show. But yeah, thanks guys. We'll have another one on Monday, so I'll see you then around the same time. Have a good night, guys. Have a good weekend.